Hello again, everyone. If you are joining us as we are coming along today, we are going to be discussing minutes, everyone's favorite topic. And we actually have a featured guest with us from Princeton Community Housing. We have Cassie Yeager joining us as a Boardable user here to share her tips and tricks. My name is Katie Cordell, and I am a customer success manager here on the Boardable team. And I also have Meredith Simmons with me, who will be leading us through the Q&A. We like to start each of these webinars with a little agenda so you know what we're going to discuss today. We'll give you an overview of our new release for our minutes feature, which is really the prompt for this new webinar. Then we will be wrapping up with Cassie's best tips and tricks that she'll be sharing with us as an actual user and minutes taker. And then finally, you'll get some of your questions answered as we do a live Q&A on the air. If you've never joined us for a webinar before, we always like to ask a poll. Meredith, if you wouldn't mind launching that poll for us and just letting us know, how long have you been using Boardable? Okay, give you just a second to get your answers in for that. Meredith, feel free to close that whenever you feel people have answered. Okay, very exciting. It looks like most of our users are pros at Boardable, having used it for more than 6 months, but we also have a couple people who are just getting started. So hopefully we'll have something here for everything and everyone today. But if you are brand new to Boardable, we are a board management tool. The goal being to centralize your activity for your board engagement, whether that's your meetings, document and file storage, discussion, polls, or your contact information. We do this by automating our scheduling, calendaring, and reminders. And finally, we're able to make this all happen by integrating with existing email providers, including Gmail and Outlook, probably our two most popular ones there. So you don't have to worry about learning a new system to stay on top of your board communication. We will be talking about minutes today, and as we're getting started on that topic, we do have a couple of different user roles that you need to know about. For our minutes takers, those folks are typically administrators or account members. Your administrators on your Boardable account are going to have access to all the information associated with billing, including the ability to add people, change your plan type, and update any organizational announcements. Your members also will have the ability to take minutes for their meetings if they have been given that permission. Members can create meetings, polls, discussions, upload documents, and view activity for their assigned groups. The final role type that we have here at Boardable are observers. So observers are that typical view-only access. So they're going to be able to participate in the groups that they are assigned to, including their discussions, polls, and RSVP to meetings, but they're not going to see documents uploaded to the Document Center. Just wanted to level set there with some of our terminology that we use for Boardable. In addition, we do have two other user types and user permissions. Our group administrator, which is great for a committee chair, maybe the person who actually is taking the minutes for that group or meeting, as well as our meeting collaborator. So the meeting collaborator is going to be that one-time lead that is a role that helps upload documents, update the agenda, as well as finalize those minutes as you are preparing and following up on your meetings. So those are the types of roles that are going to be able to take minutes here at Boardable. So we've been mentioning minutes quite a bit, and this is really our main topic today. But for those of you who aren't familiar, the minutes tool is directly on the meeting page in Boardable. So you have the ability to record your notes and decisions as well as assign tasks. We have two main versions of our minutes. What we're seeing right now is our classic minutes, but we'll be discussing our freeform minutes today as well, talking through some of the unique abilities to take minutes and follow-up items from those minutes as you're getting started with your meetings. We did have a new release with our minutes come out recently. With that new release, your minutes takers are going to be able to have a draft version of their minutes. So within minutes, you'll be able to have that draft, get it the way that you want it to be, and then publish it once you're ready. This is a popular feature that I know a lot of people have been requesting, so we're very excited for the ability to now have the draft and then the published version of the minutes. This is a great tool for getting those minutes finalized and sending out that notification to your meeting attendees. Finally, I know we mentioned that we'll be having the opportunity to ask questions during today's webinar, but we also have built-in customer support. So if you log into your Boardable account, you can find answers and help articles by navigating to that life preserver that says Help Center within your Boardable account. You'll be able to search for FAQs, quick answers, those articles, any tips and tricks that you may need as you are navigating your portal. If you would like live assistance, we also have a live support chat that's available from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That is in Eastern time. So if you're available for that support chat, that's a great way to talk to a real human and get those answers quickly. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Cassie. With Cassie, she obtained her bachelor's and master's degree from Rutgers University's School of Social Work, where she studied nonprofit management and policy. She's currently the Development and Communications Coordinator at Princeton Community Housing, where she oversees fundraising and external communication, as well as supporting the organization's governance. Working with the staff and trustees, her goal is to further PCH's mission to provide, manage, and advocate for affordable housing in Princeton, New Jersey. Cassie is also a board member of Women in Development, Mercer County, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the advancement of women in their fundraising careers. Prior to PCH, Cassie worked in the fields of domestic violence and reproductive rights. We're so thrilled to have her join us today, and Meredith is going to lead us in some Q&A so Cassie can share her favorite tips and tricks with us. Thanks, Cassie and Meredith.
Thanks, Katie. We are so excited to have Cassie join us. She was telling us before we launched she is Boardable's #1 fan, so we'll give her a little test. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to give you a test. My name is Meredith Simmons. I'm a customer marketing manager here at Boardable, and we are super excited to have this conversation with Cassie today to talk about how to be efficient and make meaningful minutes. But before we get into minutes, let's learn a little bit more about Cassie herself. So Cassie, tell us about yourself, about your role at Princeton Community Housing, and how maybe that ties into minutes a little bit of why you like them so much.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. Again, Cassie Jager. As Katie let you know, my training is in social work. I have my MSW. However, like a lot of social workers, I am not a clinical social worker. It's something that gets confused, but I think it's becoming more and more common. I am Boardable's biggest fan, Meredith. So I actually started using Boardable with Princeton Community Housing, and when I joined the board of Women in Development, as soon as I got on the board, I said, we need Boardable. Like, how are we doing this without Boardable? So yes, I am Boardable's biggest fan. So at Princeton Community Housing, as you know, we provide, manage, and advocate for affordable homes in Princeton, New Jersey. And we currently have about 460 homes that we own and manage. We are currently in the midst of a capital campaign in order to build 25 new affordable homes at our existing community, Princeton Community Village. So we're very excited about that. You know, as I said, I do the fundraising and communications for Princeton Community Housing, as well as support governance. With that, Princeton Community Housing is a very large organization. It has 2 boards. It has a community board that manages our current communities, and a development board that looks at new projects and, you know, advocates for new communities. So with that, we have, let's see, 24 trustees on our community board, 11 trustees on our DC board, and 9 committees. So I don't know how we were doing this without Boardable. But here we are. And again, I can't imagine, especially the last year, getting through that time without this.
Yeah, and that definitely leads into my next question for you. With so many committees, different boards, how do minutes play a role in your organization? Clearly, they have to be important for communication. It's part of your role, but ensuring that all of these boards, everyone's tied in together and know what's happening across the organization.
Absolutely, yes. So the minutes are so important. You know, they're giving us the official document of this is what the committee decided, so let's bring it to the board. And this is what the board decided. So like the staff, we can do this because we can look to the minutes and we can say, the board approved this, we can do this. So they're so important. Again, with 9 committees and 2 boards especially, having that and having those accessible, onboardable at, you know, the click of a mouse is so important for us. Meredith, was there another part of that question? If you don't mind, I want to make sure I answer it.
No, you totally did. And I think we want to take it a step further, because even beyond internal communication, there's the extra step of your job of governance, of making sure that there's a record of decisions made. So how does having good, strong minutes help you with managing governance?
Absolutely. Again, it is the record keeper of what has been done in the past to the current. So even when we think about succession planning as well, like let's go to the minutes and let's look what has been done. You know, let's look what we can do. Recently, the board decided to put some money aside to help anyone who's struggling with their rent. That we could support them with that, and we can use money that was put aside for that reason. So when we do that, or if we need to do it, we haven't so far, we can go to our minutes and we can say, you know, look, we have permission to do that. Every year we also submit these minutes to our internal auditor. And so again, they can say, look, PCH had permission to do that from the board.
That's awesome. And thinking through all of these notes you're going to have, all these minutes, having a long-term, record of everything, and knowing there's one of you and all these committees and different boards, how do you make sure that the minutes that are being recorded are, they match each other, or they're similar, or they record everything when you're not in the room or you're not in the board meeting? How do you manage, I would imagine a whole bunch of meetings every month that all need minutes?
Absolutely. So when we first took on Boardable, I was in a lot of these committee meetings and in the board meetings and taking the minutes and ensuring that they were there, which was a lot of work. And we work at nonprofits. We have plenty to do. So one of the things that I love about Boardable is that I can go into a committee meeting and I can say, I know that Sarah is going to take the minutes today. So even though she's not an administrator on that committee, I can just give her permission to be a collaborator during that meeting, and I can allow her to take the minutes. So what I've done is I've gone through Boardable and I created a practice meeting and I took screenshots of how one would take minutes, and there's big red arrows and writing and saying step 1, you ask for permission, and or if we didn't give you permission, just let us know and we'll make you a collaborator. It takes them through. We use the classic Minute Maker, takes them through all the steps, and at the very end, we ask them to contact or send a message through Boardable to myself, our executive director, and the chair of whatever committee or board they took minutes for. So that allows us to go in and take a look and see what they're doing and see what was there. We can, have some conversation back and forth to make sure we're all in agreement with how they look before we send it out and let the board know or include it in the next board package. I think that there's a balance between having too many hands in the pot and having the right hands in the pot. So with the committee chair, the executive director and myself, we can all be there to ensure that happens. In the future, something we're also working on with our governance committee is creating a bit of a short procedures document on how PCH takes minutes. For us, it is a necessary minimal documentation of conversation, decisions, and tasks. It's not a, you know, he said this, they said that, she said this, we all said this. You know, for us, it's not a step-by-step discussion. You know, if I wasn't in the meeting and I need that information, I need to call the committee chair and ask them what happened. But again, we're working on this document to ensure that everyone understands how we take minutes and what our minutes should look like. So again, even if I'm not in the room, if the executive director is not in the room, we're all on the same page of what's going on.
And I think you hit on something there that is a pretty common question when people are either stepping into roles where they're recording minutes, or they may be entering a new organization, which is, I think, the age-old question of how much is too much and how much is enough. And you loosely talked on what for your organization that might be. But if someone was in that where they're starting for the first time, or they're becoming a recording secretary, or taking on that role where they're taking minutes, what tips would you give them to kind of hit that right balance of what should be in there to ensure that they're taking the best minutes possible?
Yes, absolutely. So communication, first of all, I know how we take minutes, and again, they are minimal but necessary. Maybe that's not the style for every organization, but most importantly, the executive director and I have great communication of what this looks like. So I feel like sometimes minute taking can be seen as, oh, let's throw this to the lowest level staff member, or, you know, let's give this to the new trustee, or, you know, hey, you're going to be the secretary now, so you're going to take the minutes. Without any discussion, whether that be a documented discussion or a verbal discussion of this is what our minutes look like. I think, again, no matter how you take them, if they're really in depth or they're very simple, as long as everyone who is involved knows, then you're on the right path to great minutes.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the review process for minutes, and saying that you have to hit the right, again, balance of who's reviewing it and who's not, and then also taking that into the publishing sphere. So talk a little bit about what that process is for you from the moment the minutes are submitted until they're published and available.
Got it. Yeah, so once they are submitted, again, it's the meeting chair, the executive director, and myself. Of course, there's maybe a couple of times if there was a big, you know, resolution vote with financial information, our director of finance would be involved in something like that. But each of us go through, and the executive director, say he happens to go through first, he'll let me know, you know, this is what I'm going to change. Let me know if you're in agreement, and, you know, and I let him know if I recall something different, or most of the time there's no extra discussion needed. It's, you know, we're humans and we accidentally, you know, just made a little mistake, or we oversaw something. But again, each of us go through, and then at the very end, when all three of us in most cases approve, we can publish that out to the committee. What I also love about Boardable is even when they are published, it's not a final, you know, final thing. I think that's something that some of our trustees got confused at first, that if they were published, like, we can never go back and edit them. And of course, you know, I love that we can publish it. We can then allow everyone else to see it. Again, there's been enough of the right people already viewing it, so there's, you know, very rarely time that we might have to go back. But say we misspelled someone's name, or something, you know, a minor mistake, our board could let us know if there was something that needed to be done.
As someone whose name is always misspelled at Starbucks, I so appreciate that feature of having my name being fixed. So for everyone who's attending, I have one more question for Cassie from me. If you have questions for Cassie or for Katie, if they're related to Boardable, you go ahead and put them into that questions panel and go to webinar, and I'll ask them on your behalf. If we don't get to your question today, don't worry. Someone from our team will be following up with you next week with the answer to your question. Even if it's for Cassie, we'll route those to her as well. So go ahead and put those in. I know we have a couple in the queue. But Cassie, for the last question from me, if people were to take one thing away from this conversation today, what would you want it to be?
Could I have 2 takeaways?
You can have as many as you want. If you want to go like 15, go ahead. But as long as I remember.
In the spirit of being simple and just including necessary information, I'll go with 2. My first, and I think that I've driven this home before, earlier in our conversation, that, minutes is not just a simple low-level task that you throw to your new employee, that you throw to any trustee. It's so important. Again, when we do our yearly internal audit, the minutes are playing a huge role in that. It's a big responsibility. So it is so important that you communicate on what minutes look like. Not only is that just good communication, but less work for maybe the executive director or someone else who's giving a final view of those minutes. Again, my second point would be, I know it's not right for everyone, but for me, it's just communicating what is necessary. And again, if it's an in-depth conversation that occurred, it doesn't need to be in the minutes. It means maybe the committee chair or the board chair needs to pick up the phone and let someone know what happened, or, maybe they need to stop the conversation, or, whatever it may be. I just strongly believe what works for us is really brief but necessary minutes. We use, Robert's Rule of Order for guidance in our minute taking. And that's how we kind of come up with our simple, necessary minute taking procedures.
And along those lines, we did get a question from an attendee of, can you recap the broad outlook and strategy, which I think you just did, but the follow-up to that is, how do you capture long, potentially detailed or contentious discussions? I think we've all been there when there are those contentious discussions at a board meeting. So how would you record that? Is that something that you would expect the committee chair to have a record of and not in the official minutes, or something that you would want in those minutes?
I would want what the outcome was. Maybe as simple as, discussion was had around ABC, and the decision was that the executive director and staff would look into this further and report to the finance committee. It's funny, a couple of our interns now, I told them in college you write 20-page papers, and then you come into the real world and you write 3 sentences or a bullet point. I would just let everyone know what happened, but as simple as you could.
All right, Katie, the next question is for you. How do I add someone's name to the agenda as a presenter for each section?
Oh, yeah, great question. That is something that is possible to do in our freeform minutes. So first, when you are creating the meeting, you need to make sure that you're having the appropriate minutes selected for what you would like to do. Freeform is going to allow you to do that. I'm going to give me just a second, and I can go ahead and share my screen so you can see what that looks like. I apologize. Oh, there it goes. Took me just a second to load on my end. So as you are planning for your meeting, you can add someone in each section by choosing them on the agenda line item. So as I mentioned, this is something that can be done in freeform, and I believe that Meredith has posted our updates to our minutes feature on the chat section, so feel free to click that link. We'll also be sending it out afterwards. But as I'm going over here on the right-hand side, it's actually going to be something that you'll want to do when you edit the agenda. So from the main page, when I go to edit the agenda, you can then go and select the agenda item that you would like to edit, and then choose a person responsible. So just a quick tip, this is something that's going to be available in the agenda, not in the minutes section. By making myself responsible for this director's report, just remember to hit save there. And then as you're doing that, you can always, if you forget to do that before the meeting, make those adjustments during the meeting to your agenda and they will update automatically. Or you can always just make it as a note when you are taking your minutes if you're just pulling in directly from that agenda. Hey, this was presented on by Katie Cordell. Great question.
Another question for you, Katie, while you've got your screen sharing. Someone's asked how to add people who are in attendance that either didn't accept the invite or they might have found the sneaky way in by using an outside link into the meeting, making sure all of attendance is recorded.
Yeah, good question. So if I'm going back to my meeting page here today for my meeting example, if they are attendees who you invited, I think the best way to track that attendance is going to be directly from that meeting page before you get into the agenda or the minutes. So as I'm scrolling down, you can see you can track the attendance here by going to the people section of that meeting page. Within your minutes, if I select edit minutes, you're going to be able to track that in our free-form minutes as well. So once you do that, you'll be able to check off anyone who's been invited to the meeting once you open the minutes, and then anyone who made it in afterwards who maybe wasn't invited originally. If I go here under welcome and go to attendance, I would add in those additional folks under this notes section. So right between notes and where you add in your attendance, I would say additional guests and then list out their names there as well.
All right, we have time for one more question, and as a writer at heart, this is one of my favorites. Meeting and discussions happen fast. How do we handle spell check and grammar check? So I'll say for me personally, you can get the Grammarly plugin for whatever browser you're using Boardable on, or if you download the desktop app, it will work on the Boardable app on your desktop as well, which will catch most of those typos. But I'll open it to Katie and Cassie as well as their tips and tricks of how to manage spelling and grammar in a meeting. I know I always use the wrong there personally, but I'm sure they have tips as well.
I can go. Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, I was just saying I'm going to turn it over to you first. I don't have a good suggestion because Meredith just took mine. Grammarly is my best tip. In addition to having a couple extra eyes on that to proofread if you're nervous about it.
Well, Grammarly is also my best tip. I know, right? I love Grammarly, and I love that it integrates with Boardable. Besides that, I do have a feature on my MacBook that allows me to read the minutes back to me. So sometimes I listen to them be read, and for me, that's a way for me to either catch spelling, grammar mistakes, or just, you know, I again am a love of writing as well, Meredith. So a good flowing sentence is important to me.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Cassie. This has been a great conversation. I definitely learned some things, and I think I can speak for attendees as well. For attendees that had questions that have not been answered yet, don't worry, we're going to have someone from our team follow up with you. Otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar.